Chris Hensley is a registered representative of Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer member of FINRA SIPC. Investment advisor representative of Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and Houston First Financial Group are not affiliated.
The Houston Midtown chapter of the Society for Financial Awareness presents Money Matters with your host, Christopher Hensley.
Good morning, everybody. You're listening to Money Matters on KPFT. Houston is what I'm so used to saying every Friday morning at 11 a.m. But as you know, we are all in COVID-19 quarantine, lockdown, whatever you want to call it. So we are uniquely broadcasting the show live from a bedroom in my house. And we have a very great guest today. We have Mike, and I've got the phonetic spelling because I think I've been saying it wrong. It's Michalowicz.
Nailed it. You nailed it.
Okay, I had to look at the phonetic spelling. I've been saying it wrong for the last 2 weeks. So we are super excited to have you on the show. I am a fan, but I want to do kind of a teaser here for the audience about the new book, Fix This Next. The biggest problem entrepreneurs have is that they don't know what their biggest problem is. If you find yourself trapped between stagnating sales, staff turnover, and unhappy customers, what do you fix first? Every issue seems urgent, but there's no way to address them all at once. The result? A business that continues to go in endless circles, putting out urgent fires and prioritizing the wrong things. So our guest today, Mike, New York Times bestselling author, the new book, Fix This Next. So please stay tuned, keep listening. And Mike, I'm looking at you, so be patient with me because we got just a few things to knock out on the housekeeping here. If you're a longtime listener, you know we always reserve just the first few minutes to tell you a little bit about what's going on in Houston and the Gulf Coast area when it comes to financial literacy. You've heard me talk about Houston Money Week for the past, always starting into November, and that's April. It coincides with National Financial Literacy Month that takes place in April. However, with COVID-19 and what's been going on, one of the things that we do is we go out and do workshops and seminars, free and open to the public in the Houston and Gulf Coast area. And so that has definitely more than 3 people, more than 6 people, more than 9 people. So that's one of the things that we've kind of put a pause on. We are trying to get some online content out there. I know Jenny Guzman, who's part of the leadership team, has been working with Houston Women's Resource Center, and so that they've done some classes about financial recovery. I would encourage you to go to the website houstonmoneyweek.org to find out more about that and how we've kind of had to pivot. And we will be back happily in 2021. So don't think that we're going anywhere. We've missed the Houston Art Car Parade, but that'll be back next year as well. So one last housekeeping note here, KPFT, the radio station that we normally broadcast on, kind of where we're at right now is since it is a volunteer station, only paid staff are considered essential employees. So since we're a nonprofit, there's about 2 people that are considered paid essential employees. And so I know Rourke from Wide Open Spaces has been broadcasting his show, and then they're playing a lot of stuff on the archive. So hopefully you might be hearing this on the FM side instead of the archives if we can get it over to you. There is a benefit coming up for KPFT. It's called KPFT Songs from Home. This is going to be on April 23rd, and there are several musicians and performers. I see Jimmy Dale Gilmore, David Grissom. There is a giant list of performers, the Mighty Orc, that are going to be performing live. There is no cost to attend this. It's live streaming. You can always hit the donate now, the tip jar in the corner, to keep the lights on there at KPFT. With that, that's it for our calendar. And Mike, you're looking at me. We're excited and ready to get going here. So just for listeners who might not be familiar with you, I wanted to share some of the, because I am, and that's as an entrepreneur. There, you've written a slew of books. The two that stick out in my head are Profit First and Clockwork, but this new one, Fix This Next, is the one we'll kind of do a deep dive into. This one's coming out on April 28th in the hard copy if you want it, Kindle, or if you want the audio version on Audible, you can already get that. That's available now. It's the next one in my queue. So,
Great.
but Mike, so you've got the Pumpkin Plan. I know that one, I believe, was a New York Times bestseller. Surge. A lot of these I need to add back. I was sharing with you. I guess this is a good way to intro here. I was sharing with you the kind of the principles of Clockwork as if you are a small business owner, a solo entrepreneur, an entrepreneur, and you're pushing your business into a pathway where you're expanding and you're getting things automated. One of the things that you recommend is giving yourself a mandatory 4-week vacation and putting yourself into position to do that. I did that back in March during spring break, and I was trying to do like in life, anytime you try to do shortcuts. So I'm only gonna allow myself 2 weeks. Well, it was spring break during the coronavirus, so that 2 weeks automatically extended to the 4 weeks there. Just as an interesting side note for anybody else who goes through that, I would definitely recommend those 2 books. Let me get back on. I'm kind of going off the rails here. Let me get back on track here. So the book, Fix This Next. Let's talk about that. Why did you write this book?
So I'm a small business owner, and now I've become a full-time author. I love the entrepreneurial journey, and I email my readership, my established readership, to ask what's the challenges you're facing in your small business now. And sometimes it's funny, Chris, just an error results in such benefit. I sent out a email request, but I must have double clicked because it sent out the request twice in rapid succession. And I always ask the same question: what's the biggest challenge you face right now in your business? The biggest challenge. And the response came back, but from the same people. Some people responded twice, minutes apart, with different challenges. And that's when it became very apparent to me, this rush to all the apparent issues, the urgent issues in our business. And I concluded that the biggest challenge entrepreneurs have is knowing what their biggest challenge is. So 5 years ago is when that email went out. It takes me about 5 years to write a book. And so I researched it. And the essence of what I like to do is boil down the complexity of entrepreneurship to the single most impactful element. So I wrote a book called Profit First, you mentioned. It's like, how do we really drive profit in a business? And it's simply take your profit first, hide it from yourself, and you actually drive more profitability. It's the most effective tool. In Clockwork, how do we make a business become efficient? The most impactful thing I found is if you can remove a business owner for 4 weeks from working in that business, the business is forced now to work on its own. And in Fix This Next, to find our challenge, we simply have to ask a series of simple questions around what I call the business hierarchy of needs. And by asking just these simple questions, we very quickly can pinpoint the one thing to work on, as opposed to trying to tackle the many things. And most business owners, Christopher, it's constantly putting out fires. I got this issue, I got that issue, and morning to night, it's always fixing issues. And the next day, we're cycling through the same process of putting out fires. I found businesses that progress and achieve the vision of the owner consistently are very deliberate in their action. And that was my intention with Fix This Next.
I love that. I love that. So I want to go a little bit further on that because there's a couple different things that stand out there. One, when you mentioned Profit First, I'm just going to put a little asterisk there because it's such a great book on accounting principles. But I find myself recommending this to my small business owners quite a bit. Is it okay to say a fun book on accounting? Because I don't know if those two things go together, but yeah, absolutely. That is by far one of the best ways to get a business that is profitable but doesn't necessarily know it, or maybe they're not doing the right things into the right area. So it's one I recommend a lot. But you talked about making those concise actionable items. And that's exactly my takeaway from that book. There's a lot of books on accounting, but what it boils down to is if I can read something and I can walk away with some very actionable tips.
Yes.
And that's the same thing with Clockwork. Here, it reads well. Your stories are very funny as well. But at the end of the day, when I get to the end of that book, there's a list of things that I need to be doing. And so I love that. But this one, Fix This Next, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but kind of geared towards business owners.
Yes.
It's extremely difficult to figure out what is the most important thing. What do you have to tell business owners as they're going through kind of that anxiety of what's the biggest thing, what's the biggest fire to put out, or what's the most important thing to put out?
Yeah, I think first of all is just understanding why we are in that firefighter mode and the importance of getting out of it. And it's a real simple example. I explain it and Fix This Next. I'll give you a shortened version. You can do it in your mind or you can do it on a piece of paper, but if you draw the letter A in the center of a piece of paper and put a circle around it, that's representative of where our business is in this moment, point A. And for many businesses, it's the challenge they're facing now or crisis. We're doing this during the COVID pandemic. Like there is macroeconomic shift going on right now, which is triggering micro crisis for business. So that's where we are now. The second step is you draw an arrow out in any direction of your choosing away from A. And what the arrow represents is an action that you can take right now to get you out of that crisis. But as a second step, draw another arrow in a different direction of your choosing, and do it 3 or 4 or 5 times, as many times as you wish, in whatever directions you choose. And what those arrows all represent are the multitude of choices we can make that gets out of crisis. But as the final step, what I tell people to do is draw the letter B in the bottom left corner of that piece of paper or in their mind. And what that represents is the vital need of your business, the one deliberate action it needs you to take for sustainability and growth. And chances are, of all those arrows you drew, few point to B, and maybe actually none of them. And some of them actually point in the opposite direction of B. And the significance of this illustration is that B represents where we need to go. A is where we are, but we don't consider B. We don't even know what B is. So we constantly are escaping from crisis and really simply going to a new point A, a new crisis. And so this is an illustration of what we experience. The morning starts with a crisis and ends with a crisis. The next day, it's a repeat. And many businesses go in this circuitous pattern of never breaking out. So the goal is not on what to fix. The goal is not on how to fix the problems we have. It's to know what's the thing, what we need to fix next. Like, what is it? And then we apply the how. So this is all about, Fix This Next is about identifying the what. And to your point, it's called the business hierarchy of needs. Something I translated from Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's called biomimicry, where we look at something that works for kind of the human genome or nature itself, and then we translate it to a business application. And what Maslow argued in the Maslowian hierarchy of needs for human needs is we have some base needs that need to be satisfied no matter what: breathing air, eating food, drinking water. Only once that's adequately satisfied can we then aspire to higher level needs, having shelter around us, protection from the elements and harm, and moving all the way up ultimately to what he calls self-actualization. But if at any time a base level need is not satisfied, we revert to addressing that base. Well, in the business hierarchy of needs, there's a similar model with one significant differentiator. There's 5 level needs, just like Maslow, that a business has. The foundation is sales. Sales is the creation of cash. That's the oxygen for a business. Right above that is profit. Profit is the shelter for a business. It protects a business. No profit, you have all the sales in the world with no profit, your business is highly at risk. And you go all the way up to the highest level in the business hierarchy of needs, which is called legacy, or the creation of permanence. The significant difference, though, is that we are neurologically wired into ourselves. So for the Maslowian hierarchy of needs, if someone runs and puts a bag over my head and duct tape around my neck, Christopher, I will know biologically that I'm suffocating, and I will tear that bag to rip it off my face. It's a biological response. But in business, we're not biologically wired into it. And the problem is we think we are, or at least we act like we are, because we say we trust our gut. My instinct says this, but we're not instinctually wired to our business. So we need to evaluate this business hierarchy of needs with the consideration of empirical data. What's the proof that this is happening or not? And it's very simple questions, but as we analyze this business hierarchy of needs, we can pinpoint where we are right now, or our business is, by just asking a series of questions, backing with empirical data. Is this the truth? Is this the fact or not? and then identifying the most base level need that's not being satisfied and address it. So that's how we navigate the business hierarchy of needs.
I love that. I love that. Usually I'm trying to sit here and smile during these interviews, but I'm intensely taking notes. So the camera's catching this, so I got to be aware of that. But there was so much information that you just gave here that is super important for business owners. One, we all know people with that personality type where they're crisis driven. As a business owner, it's easy to fall into that. And you gave this tool of kind of point A and point B. Point A is the crisis, and it could change from day to day. B is really defining that vital role that business need, and that's the question that we're trying to answer that we might not even know that we need to answer. We talked about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we talked about the business version of that, and how the cells is kind of the oxygen that we need. You gave the example of if it was somebody putting a bag over our head and starving us from oxygen, we would know instinctually to pull that bag off. But when it comes to a business and sales, it's not necessarily intuitive. And so we have to go back and validate with proof, and that you have a series of questions in this book that help us get there. That's a lot. a lot
to digest.
A lot of really good stuff.
But it is rooted in a very simple model. And what people are doing with this is you can even draw out this pyramid, the business hierarchy of needs, which is like a pyramid structure in these 5 levels. And what it triggers us to do is between every action and reaction, there needs to be contemplation. But businesses in crisis or facing a challenge, particularly right now, there's an action and reaction with almost no consideration. It's like, what do I need to do now? And what do I need to do next? But if we put contemplation in there, we say, what's the situation? How does it serve the vital need of the company, or does it not serve it at all? And then we have a much more qualified reaction, deliberately stepping forward. Now, I think it's important to share the 5 levels. The base level is sales, as we explained. That's the creation of cash. The level above it is profit, which is the creation of stability. No profit, no runway for the business. And with that profit, it affords us contemplation. A business that goes into a challenge with a lot of money in it has the time to sit, think, and be calculated. A business with no money starts doing desperate things. Above profit is order. Order is the creation of efficiency throughout an organization. And the fortification is an example of this. If I can leave my business for 4 weeks, there has to be a degree of organizational efficiency. I'm not carrying the business on my back as a small business owner. Above that is impact. Impact is the creation of transformation. This is where businesses realize there's something they're offering significantly beyond the transaction. They're impacting people's lives, they're shifting their lives. That's transformation. The highest level is legacy. Legacy is the creation of permanence. And as I was doing my research and experimenting with my own businesses, what I found so fascinating about this level is there's a realization that happens. This is when a business owner realizes they were never a business owner. They've always been a business steward. They had a responsibility to bring this entity to life, if you will, but it was never about them or their involvement as much as it's about the continuance of this organization. So they don't matter in the big picture. What matters is the continuance of this organization to have the impact it was designed to have. So that's the 5 levels. The business hierarchy of needs is not a ladder. It's not like you climb to the top and you wave from up there. This is something we cycle through. And this applies to a brand new business, just starting up, and the biggest companies in the world, like GE and Procter & Gamble. Those companies iterate through this. And based upon the events around them and what's going on, they have to shift either down or up. And there's a real simple way to navigate this. We always start at the foundation, and there's 2 basic questions we can ask ourselves. I call is there any? Is it adequate? The is there any question. If we look at sales, we say, is there or are there any sales? If the answer is no, we have no oxygen for the business. We have a sales issue, and we need to sell. And in the book, I explain there's kind of 5 elements within the sales level and things you need to do. But the most rudimentary level is are there any sales? The next question is, are there adequate sales to support some degree of profit? Because all these levels link together. So if I have no sales, I have a sales problem. If I have some sales, I simply have to ask myself, is there enough volume in sales that I can start extracting a profit? And many businesses here don't consider that. They just say more sales is better, but it's not. The right sales are better. So once we have the right sales flowing in, we look at the profit level and we say, are there any profits? If there's no profit, then we have a profit issue, and we must address that. Then we ask the second question, is there adequate profit to support organizational efficiency? Now, one important note I want to make here is all these elements play out in our business at all times. Like you have to have some degree of efficiency. You must have some degree of impact. You must have sales. But the area we focus or concentrate our efforts on, where that point B is always within one of these levels. So the other ones we're in the ballpark, and then we're driving forward on that one element. Once it's fully satisfied, we go through the cycle again to identify the next need. And then just to finish it out, I ask, is there any order in my organization? If there is no order, if there's inefficiencies throughout, then I have an efficiency challenge. Then I say, is there adequate order to support impact? I mean, do we have enough efficiency that we can start shifting lives consistently? If so, we go to impact level. So we always start at the base and work our way up. Whenever a base level need is not satisfied, there's a bag over my head, I'm not getting enough satisfactory oxygen, then we must revert to the base, fully address it, and then we start aspiring back up.
I love it. I love it. And one of the things you mentioned, as these things are happening, whether we're noticing them and getting a system and putting some order to it or not, they're happening in our business if the business is going, if it's thriving. And so this is purposeful and putting some framework and structure to it. So I really love that. So we've got just about 6 minutes or so before the end of the show. Your stories in the books are always so good. So I would like to maybe see if you could share a story or an example of maybe a business owner or a business that were able to use some of these principles and were successful at it. What kind of transformation did they have?
Yeah, so there's a couple of stories I want to share, but due to time, I'll restrict it to one. I happen to have their product in front of me, so it's pretty interesting.
Oh,
it's
nice.
Cottonwood Coffee, if you're watching on the screen, and this points to how they leveraged the business hierarchy of needs. So Cottonwood Coffee is an established coffee house in South Dakota, 2 locations. They also have a roastery, meaning they make their own coffee. And they were living really at the impact level, very established, brand recognition in their community, and they were creating experiences. So a transformational level or impact level is where it's beyond the transaction. They don't just supply coffee like a 7-Eleven does, for an example. They're shifting people's lives. They're building community. That was it. Well, COVID hits, and now you got to shut down all your coffee stores. So that immediately thrust them back into profit and sales considerations. What sales are still coming in? Is there any? And is it adequate? And if there was any, can we drive profit? So they did still have some sales coming in because they had online, and they focused then at the profit level, and they started extracting profit from it. They adjusted things around, cut some costs, but then they jumped back down to sales and said, we got some profit coming out of the few things we have going on now, but we need to expand this. And they started becoming creative. So part of the sales process is aligning your offering to your client's new needs, but still being in congruence with your capabilities. I call it business as usual in unusual circumstances. How do we sustain our core competency, excellent coffee, but in a way that is needed now? And they created this product. So I don't know if you can see the label, but it says Immune Booster on it.
Yes,
and,
yes.
Cold brewed coffee. They started making coffee that's infused with vitamins like D3 and so forth.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, this is not, listen, their goal is not to say, you're cured from COVID,
right?
Of course, but their goal is to say, you have an established habit of drinking coffee. You want to get immune boosters, keep doing what you're doing, and you're going to start elevating your immune system, as opposed to here's vitamin D3 tablets you need to take once a morning, which I say I do, but they sit in the closet. I never open it up, but I never miss my coffee. So it's just a really interesting spin to increase sales. And sure enough, this product is moving off the shelves. So
wow.
This is a good example of a company very quickly iterating, identifying the problem, which initially was not sales. It was bringing stability to the organization in the new normal, and then shifting down to sales, building that foundation stronger. And they did with this product.
I love it. That's a very good example of aligning their offer to the new need, what is currently going on, adjusting, right. Pivoting. Well, we're right here at the end of the show. Mike, for people who want to find out more about the new book, how can they find out about the book, and also to visit you at your website as well?
Thank you. So I got one spot to go. It's fixthisnext.com. And there's details on the book and in me, but I think the greatest thing there is we empowered a free evaluation of a business. We weren't going to activate this for a while, but because of COVID, we activated it. And there's no downloads, no nothing. You can just evaluate your business. It'll ask you a series of 25 questions, and it'll pinpoint what that B is for your business, what you need to work on very specifically right now in this moment. So that's fixthisnext.com.
I love it. Then you get your B and you write it on a piece of paper and you put it right in front of you so you remember that.
Right. And you go tackle that. And once you fix it, you evaluate your business again and you figure out your new B. And now we start marching forward.
Fantastic. Mike, in the last 2 minutes here, what have I forgot to ask you that you would like to leave listeners with today?
Not that you forgot to ask, but it's kind of a call to arms. It's kind of ironic. The world needs us more than ever, but how it asked for our help is it punched us in the face. The world has given us a bloody nose and a black eye and is saying, I need you more than ever. The backbone of the global economy is small business. We employ 50% or more of the population, and of the employable population, and we are 90% of the businesses that exist. If small business collapses, so does the global economy. So it's crazy, but we need to stand up and step forward now more than ever in this new norm. And perhaps it's an opportunity too, because this is the petri dish for entrepreneurship. Needs are shifting from customers. We as small business owners have the responsibility to listen acutely, just like Cotton with Coffee did, make some adjustments and be of service in a new way.
I love it. I love it. Mike, thank you for taking time to share this with us. Have a great almost weekend there.
You too, Christopher.
And you have been listening to KPFT Houston.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Money Matters Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, visit us on the web at www.moneymatterspodcast.com. Drop us a line on SpeakPipe on the right-hand corner. It will receive any voicemails, questions, thoughts, concerns that you have about the show. In addition to this, we recently launched a Patreon campaign. Click on the Donate Now tab to hit the tip jar and find out what Patreon's campaign is all about.